50,000 Mongol invaders against barely 1,000 samurai standing alone on a storm-lashed shore. Armor soaked, blades trembling, a nation on the brink of annihilation. On that night, impossible odds met unbreakable resolve. A lightning-split sky revealed warriors who refused to kneel, archers with numb fingers, monks chanting between thunderclaps, and a wounded commander who whispered, "If we fall, Japan ends with us." But hidden in the darkness were secrets the Mongols never saw coming. What mistake doomed the greatest war machine on Earth? What ancient code transformed fear into fury? And what storm, man-made or divine, turned the tide of history forever? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind the Battle of Hakata. The first omen was silence, not the peaceful kind that settles over rice fields at dusk, but the strained, breathless quiet of a nation waiting for something terrible to arrive. Japan felt it long before the Mongol ships ever touched the horizon, a pressure in the air, a tightening in the chest, as though the very wind carried whispers of armies that devoured continents. From the snow-worn plains of the north to the humid forests of Kyushu, rumors traveled like drifting ash. The Mongol Empire was coming, an empire that had trampled kingdoms beneath hooves and iron, an empire whose banners had never bowed. Mothers lit incense in trembling hands, whispering prayers for sons who sharpened swords they feared they would not live to wield. Across the samurai clans, old rivalries flickered like dying embers. Families divided by centuries of mistrust now faced a truth larger than lineage. If they did not stand together, they would not stand at all. Lords convened in dim wooden halls, their armor resting beside them like silent promises. They spoke of the Mongols' thunderous formations, of bombs that split the air like demons screaming, of tactics so alien they felt almost sorcerous. And always Kyushu listened, for it would be the first to burn. Along Hakata Bay, fishermen stared at the empty sea, imagining the monstrous fleet that would soon break the horizon. Storm clouds gathered there, darker each day, as though the heavens themselves recoiled from what approached. Japan stood on the edge of a blade, its steel cold, its balance fragile. Duty pulled the samurai forward, fear pulled them back. Honor demanded sacrifice, survival demanded unity. A choice loomed, heavy as thunder. A tide was rising that no wall could stop. But for the samurai, surrender is not an option. Night in the samurai camps was never truly dark. Not anymore. Fear had a way of lighting everything from within, turning shadows into doubts, turning silence into questions no warrior wished to ask. The campfires sputtered in the wind, rolling down from the hills, their pale orange glow revealing faces drawn tight with unspoken dread. Veteran samurai, men who had swung blades in a dozen clan wars, now whispered like frightened novices. They spoke of Mongol tactics of encirclement so swift the trapped never understood how the ring had closed, of volleys of arrows that fell like black rain, of booming bombs that shattered shield lines as though the gods themselves had hurled thunder. Each retelling carved deeper lines into their weathered faces. Younger warriors fared no better. Beneath lacquered armor, hands trembled just enough to betray them. They adjusted helmet straps not for comfort, but to hide the twitch of anxiety. They stared into the flames, imagining the distant cries of their families, left behind in villages that would be defenseless if the Mongols broke through. Legacy weighed heavy on their shoulders, every father's expectation, every ancestor's honor whispering, "Do not shame us." In a tent at the camp's heart, commanders argued in hushed, urgent tones. Strategies clashed like unseen blades, ambush on the shoreline or fortify the walls. Strike first or wait for the inevitable storm. Each man knew the truth. None dared say aloud one mistake could doom them all. They were outnumbered 50 to 1. Even courage has its limits. Armor clattered in the cold night air, not with confidence but with fear wearing a warrior's disguise. Scouts returned breathless, speaking of the Mongol numbers, monstrous, endless, a tide of steel. An uneasy stillness settled over the camp. the kind that comes before the sky breaks. Yet fear, when cornered, can become something far more dangerous. Hakata Bay waited like a beast, holding its breath. Its waters, usually calm and silver beneath the moon, now churned with a restless pulse, as if sensing the clash that would soon stain its tides. Jagged shallows stretched outward like the ribs of some ancient creature, while defensive sea walls cast long, broken shadows across the shoreline. This land was about to become a crucible, and both armies felt it. As dawn and dusk traded places, the Mongol fleet arrived in armada so vast it blotted out the horizon. Ship after ship drifted into view, forming a floating city of soldiers, horses, siege engines, and banners that snapped like the wings of dark birds. From the shoreline, the samurai watched in tight silence. Even the bravest felt their breath snag as the fleet expanded beyond sight, its scale almost unnatural. The Mongols brought more than numbers. They brought weapons Japan had never faced, explosive bombs that spat fire and smoke, catapult stones that shrieked through the air, and archers trained to release in perfect, devastating unison. Against this, the samurai held weapons passed down through generations, blades honed for personal duels, not for storms of metal. But the land itself whispered its own strategy. Along the coastline, the Japanese had built walls of stone and logs, trenches hidden beneath shallow tides, and networks of watchtowers that glowed like fireflies against the creeping dark. Samurai commanders studied the geography with narrowed eyes, seeking any edge the terrain might offer. Across the water, Mongol camps throbbed with impatience. Miscommunications crackled between Korean sailors, Chinese infantry, and Mongol captains. Supplies shifted poorly in the rising winds. A storm began to gather, not yet fierce, but enough to fray tempers and loosen discipline. The sky darkened, the waves grew teeth, and in that uneasy twilight, both sides felt destiny tightening around them like a drawn bowstring. And then, without warning, the first spark ignites. It began not with a roar, but with the soft dip of oars cutting through black water. A small band of samurai, no more than a handful of silhouettes against the stormy horizon, pushed their narrow boats into Hakata Bay. Their mission was simple: test the Mongol defenses, gauge their readiness, return before dawn. But war rarely honors simplicity. The night was thick with tension. Clouds rolled low, swallowing the moon, turning the sea into a shifting void. Every splash, every creak of wood echoed twice as loud in the warriors' ears. They rowed with steady, controlled breaths, men rehearsing courage in the face of an empire. Then, from the Mongol fleet, a torch flared. One torch became three. Three became a wave of alarm, spreading across the armada like wildfire chasing dry grass. A sentry had spotted movement, blurred shapes drifting too close for comfort, and misread the patrol for a full assault. Shouts erupted across the decks, horns bellowed conflicting signals into the storm-laden air. Some ships pulled anchors, others advanced, others spun in uncertainty, slamming into neighbors with hollow wooden thuds. The samurai froze for a heartbeat, stunned by the overreaction. This was not the precision they expected. This was chaos, raw, clumsy, panicked. A commander on the lead boat felt his pulse quicken. Had they truly rattled the greatest army on earth with nothing but shadows? Lightning split the clouds, revealing a fractured fleet. Soldiers stumbling over soaked planks, captains yelling contradictory orders, archers loosing arrows at ghosts. The storm, still gathering strength, slammed waves against the Mongol hulls, amplifying every mistake. Somewhere within the confusion, a horn was blown too early, or perhaps a torch was dropped too soon. Whatever it was, it triggered a chain reaction. Ships repositioning disastrously, formations breaking apart, discipline dissolving in the dark. What was meant to be a quiet reconnaissance had struck the Mongols like a thrown stone shattering still water. Ripples of disorder spread outward, unstoppable now. The samurai expected resistance. What came instead was opportunity. The first clash came with a scream swallowed by the wind. A samurai's foot slammed onto a Mongol deck, water cascading from his armor as his blade flashed in the lightning-lit dark. In an instant, Hakata Bay erupted into a nightmare symphony of steel, thunder, and shattering wood. The storm howled around them, tearing at banners, ripping arrows off their course, and rolling the enormous Mongol ships like drunken giants. Yet the samurai pressed forward one boat, then another, then a dozen more, leaping into the heart of the floating fortress. Their war cries cracked through the tempest, fierce and desperate, a sound drawn from every ancestor who had ever demanded honor in the face of death. Mongol soldiers surged to meet them. Shield walls rose, bows bent in perfect, terrifying unison. Explosive bombs burst like thunder trapped inside the hulls, spraying shards across the decks. The air stank of sulfur and burning pitch, and the screams of the wounded mixed with the crash of waves slamming against the fleet. On one ship, a young samurai found himself surrounded. Mongol lancers drove forward, their boots thudding in disciplined rhythm, pushing him toward the railing, but he refused to yield. With a guttural shout, he cut low, sending sparks dancing off armored legs before hurling himself into the fray again. Every heartbeat was a borrowed moment, every breath a wager against fate. Elsewhere, seasoned commanders fought as though time itself had slowed. They studied enemy movements, exploiting each falter caused by the storm's violence. When a wave smashed a Mongol ship sideways, a samurai squad boarded in that instant, using instability as a weapon. They moved like shadows, sharpened into steel. But the Mongols were not so easily undone. Their discipline held, their formations reformed, even as the storm clawed at their ranks. Bombs continued to detonate, each blast a reminder that Japan faced a force unlike any before. The night pulsed with danger and thunder, every second balanced between triumph and catastrophe. Yet, amidst the chaos, something larger was building, an unseen force, gathering strength in the boiling heart of the storm. And as the tempest reached its peak, the true turning point began to reveal itself. The storm did not simply intensify, it awakened. Winds screamed across Hakata Bay, twisting into violent spirals that tore sails from masts and ripped torches from trembling hands. Rain hammered the decks in sheets so dense it blurred the world into a dark, trembling watercolor. Even the most seasoned Mongol sailors widened their eyes in fear, gripping rails that splintered beneath their fists. Then, the waves rose. Not gently, not rhythmically, but as towering walls of black water, crashing sideways into the fleet with the fury of a world ending. Ships tore free of their anchors, ripped violently into one another, hulls cracking like ribs under a giant's heel. Mongol formations, so fearsome on land, collapsed into chaos at sea. Horses screamed. Men tumbled overboard. Orders vanished in the roar of the tempest. And through this apocalyptic chaos, the samurai moved with instinctive precision. Their smaller vessels danced atop the waves, guided by generations of coastal warriors who understood the sea's every mood. They seized drifting Mongol ships, boarded broken decks, and turned confusion into lethal advantage. Lightning slashed across the sky, freezing the battlefield into brief, blinding tableau. Samurai silhouettes poised with raised blades. Mongol archers firing desperately through wind-whipped rain. Entire ships splitting open as waves swallowed them whole. This was the nameless force later called kamikaze, the divine wind. But in this moment, it felt less like a blessing and more like a judgment. Whether heaven sent or nature's wrath, it struck precisely when the Mongols needed stability most. And the samurai understood. This was the turning point fate had delivered. Arrows rained upon crews scrambling to escape shattered hulls. Samurai war cries merged with thunder, echoing through the carnage as more Mongol ships capsized, piling wreckage upon wreckage. A final, desperate attempt at regrouping faltered under the storm's relentless blows. Discipline, drowned beneath the heaving sea. By the time the sky began to pale, Hakata Bay was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. The invincible army of 50,000 had been reduced to scattered survivors clinging to debris. And when dawn finally broke, the world would witness the aftermath of a miracle born from fury and wind. Dawn crept over Hakata Bay with a muted, hesitant light, as though even the sun feared to reveal what the night had done. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered across the water. What had once been a mighty Mongol armada was now a floating graveyard, broken masts jutting from the waves like splintered bones, torn sails clinging to debris, and bodies silent, drifting, claimed by the tide. Samurai patrols moved along the shoreline with heavy steps, their armor streaked with salt and smoke. Victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like exhaustion carved into the soul. For every Mongol body washed ashore, there was the haunting possibility of a Japanese warrior among them, one who had fought with bravery, only to vanish into the chaos of the storm. Survivors staggered across the sand, some with wounds that would not close, others with eyes that stared through reality as though the night still raged before them. In nearby villages, families gathered at the coast, searching the horizon for sons, husbands, brothers. The wind carried their whispered prayers, mingling with the cries of gulls circling above the wreckage. Grief and relief intertwined one breath, mourning a loved one, the next celebrating another's return. Far across the sea, political shockwaves rippled through the Mongol Empire. Kublai Khan demanded answers, demanded vengeance, demanded to know how his undefeated war machine had been humbled by a storm and a handful of warriors. The defeat stung not only his pride, but his empire's sense of inevitability. In Japan, the story grew, with every retelling monks attributing the storm to divine intervention, commanders recalling moments of impossible bravery, villagers speaking of a wind sent by the gods themselves. Yet beneath the rising legend, the samurai who survived knew a truth carved into their bones. Victory had come at a cost, and that cost would echo long after the storm's roar faded from memory. But legends, once born, have a power all their own.